let me play you something just absolutely gorgeous. This is the sound of Ugandan kids singing at a school, and I came across this authentic audio because one of the mums at my soccer club, Marie McLeod, took her family to Uganda on the promise of her own mother, and we ended up at a pizza night for the soccer club, hearing about from her two boys about their visit to a Ugandan primary school and their envoy, I guess, their missionary kind of status by taking soccer balls to get the kids to go to school and play soccer. Joining you on the radio is Marie McLeod, a soccer mum from my soccer team, the Caulfield Cobras, who are heavily involved in this, and also director of the Community Kindness Company. Marie, thank you for coming in and following up the pizza night.
You're so welcome. It's a pleasure to be here.
It was just such an interesting night, seeing us all out there on a Tuesday night. I think the pizza had been donated by one of the local sponsors. And there we all were supporting this primary school in Uganda on this muddy, cold night. How did I become involved with that? It's because of you.
Yes. Well, I think that it goes back to my parents and my childhood. And I think, as a parent now, I think about how we can model kindness like this to our children. So I come from New Zealand. You'll probably hear a bit of an accent. And I grew up with parents who embodied kindness, despite the fact that they have 5 children of their own. They really had such a welcoming place. And as my mother, who was an educator, retired and was looking for ways to contribute her skills into the world, she reconnected with a Ugandan priest, actually, who has lots of connections to local schools. And that led to her about 5 years ago going to Uganda. One of the things that she noticed was that as she started to visit schools, they didn't have any books, and any books that they did have were ones that had been donated from the US or other places. They weren't local, they weren't relevant to those children.
They weren't in their language.
They weren't in their language, they didn't have local pictures. And so my mother, being my mother, decided that she would write books for Ugandan school children. So there are now 16 books that have photos and local content that she's created, and they've been through a process of being approved by the government there, and now looking for ways to distribute those. So that was sort of the beginning. And then when
her thing was literacy.
Her thing was literacy. And, as an adult looking at a country like Uganda and thinking about how could we help, it's logical to think that literacy might be a way that education is important and we want to get children out of poverty. We want to break that cycle. But when my mum came and said, my 70th birthday wish is for all of you, she has 5 children, and her wish was for her 5 children, their partners and her grandchildren to come with her to Uganda and become part of this. And then my boys...
And their ages are?
Yeah, so I have 3 children. I have twins, Jess and Finn, who are 13, and Jamie, who's 11. And particularly my boys said, Grandma, we love that you do this, and we love that you care about books, and we can see that that's, a part of helping. But our passion is soccer. And so as we think about going on this adventure with you, and we think about how we might sort of raise the money and support communities there, could we do something about soccer? And I think that we were a bit confronted. But I think that we need to recognise in a kind of top-down, bottom-up that adults will think about practical things like literacy and kids will think like kids. And we sort of really had to create space for that. And probably the hook for me was that when we started to investigate and teachers in Uganda said, actually, soccer keeps kids in schools. It keeps them coming, it keeps them there after school, it connects them, and possibly the most disadvantaged kids coming to school because they love the game.
So just like in Indigenous communities in Western Australia with the Clontarf Foundation that Jared Neesham, who's the Fremantle's Dockers initiating coach, first coach that they had, he set up a program that keeps Indigenous kids in school, which is footy. So it's the same premise that if you teach them how to play soccer and give them soccer, it'll get them to come to school.
Yeah, it's kind of engagement, isn't it? What do they most want? What do they love to do? What lights them up? And how might we sort of be smart about that in terms of, going through the back door rather than going straight in with books. Here, you need to learn to read. Here's something that you love to do and my boys love to do. And
so how did it work? Like, did the Ugandan kids know how to play soccer? They did have it already?
Yes, they do. And despite the fact that their fields are all full of puddles and potholes and on sloping kind of land, and despite the heat and the rain and the kind of not having eaten that day, kids are running around with sometimes balls that are made of rags of plastic.
Plastic. We were going to ask how you said plastic.
And so they want to play the game, and there are big billboards now, and it's becoming a very popular sport, with some parents then saying, well, actually, maybe our kids could earn money from soccer. So there's this kind of validation that sport might be something good.
So let me just tell you where Uganda is, because I looked it up. I know of Uganda because of a childhood hearing about Idi Amin, So the Republic of Uganda is a landlocked country in East Africa, bordered to the east by Kenya, to the north by South Sudan, to the west by the Democratic Republic of the Congo, to the southwest by Rwanda, and to the south by Tanzania. So it's just stuck in the middle of arid desert.
It felt very, very remote and very kind of crazy. And to be honest, my husband was very unhappy about my mother's suggestion that we take our children to Uganda.
Yeah,
and he chose not to go.
Did he?
He chose not to go. And his act of kindness actually was to let us go, because he found it very confronting. But yet he used his
because it's a hub. It's terrorist.
Yes,
activities.
And if you look at the Australian government website, it will say don't go. And so for him, he's very risk averse and cautious. And, really that was a big deal for him to allow me and to trust me and my family to go on that adventure with his children. And for him then to be the one that reached out to the Cobras Club. Because, again, soccer, he's Scottish. He loves soccer, and he loves that his boys love it. And so he was the one that reached out to the Cobras and said, hey, my boys and my family are going to do this. Is there any way that you have some balls that you might send? And we had another friend that works for a big sporting company, and together we collected about, I think maybe we took 10, 12, 14 balls, something like that, and some old used kit. We took some secondhand soccer boots that my boys had grown out of, but really that's all that we had around soccer. All of us took all of our luggage allowance with everything. My girlfriends collected bras because we were going to visit a midwife in a small community. And that was the thing, that everyone wanted to help once they knew that we were doing something like this.
So you brokered an opportunity for other people to help.
Yeah. So, and I think really that's one of the things that's very important to me, is that I know, perhaps from the way that I grew up, but also because of what I do professionally, how important kindness is. And for me, we had a rocky start. Like, we had 3 children in 2 years in a country that neither my husband and I are from. Finn, one of my sons, has high-functioning autism, and the younger one has ADHD. So life has been challenging. But one of the things that I know is incredibly important, both to receive but also to give, is kindness. So, the opportunity for me to go and do this alongside my parents and my brothers and sisters and my nieces, it was just extraordinary. But what was even more extraordinary is how, when we said we were doing this, the kindness that started to come in by other people using their skills and resources to sort of bolster our opportunity to do good whilst we were there.
So do you think that people are looking for the opportunity to be kind in ways other than just by giving money?
Yes.
And so they hook into people who are actually doing it. Like, you become the trailblazer, but through you I can also be kind.
Yes, it's interesting actually. The Resilient Youth Australia, who have surveyed 180,000 young people who are grades from 3 to 12, have discovered that 90% of young people say that they would like to give back, but only 30% of those are saying that they're really connected to their community. So it seems that, you know, we have this gap where people want to give in meaningful ways, but they're less connected to their community. And when you're less connected to community, you don't naturally know some of those meaningful ways to give back, whether it be locally or abroad. So one of the things I'm interested in is how do we broker that? And I think in days gone by, when we knew each other more in neighbourhoods, organically that kind of kindness was able to happen. But now it seems that there's more issues of social isolation and people being less connected, that we might need to find formal ways to broker that.
So my understanding is that you've been doing that in South Australia with a project.
So I felt so strongly about this that I created a company called the Kindness Company, and one of the products of that is the Community Kindness Challenge. And we've linked that into the findings in positive psychology and neuroscience, is that actually kindness is like psychological chocolate. We really thrive when we have the opportunity to be of service and goodness.
So it works just as much for me to be kind as it does for you to receive it, if you allow yourself to receive it.
Absolutely, that's right.
You have to allow yourself to receive it.
That's right. And so many of us now are trying to be,
I'm fine.
Oh, you know, and keeping up with the Joneses.
You don't have to do that.
Yes, and our societies are kind of, unfortunately, and social media hasn't helped, that we feel less able to authentically say, do you know what, I'm really not doing so well and I could do with some help. So we do need to culturally kind of address that. But I think that when people have the opportunity, they really step up, which is what we saw with the Ugandan thing. But over in South Australia, the city of Port Adelaide Enfield, we invited people in that community to come to a workshop where we talked to them about the science of wellbeing and a framework around wellbeing, and that really that when you do acts of service for other people using your strengths, then that enables you to activate every pillar of that wellbeing framework. And then we match them up with requests for kindness that come in from community. It might have been doing an old lady's garden. It might have been running a homeless dinner for people. And so they did that, and then they came back to tell the stories, and it was really an incredibly powerful experience.
Marie, I could talk to you all morning, but I can't because the morning's nearly finished. It's coming up to 12 o'clock. But thank you so much for sharing the story. Marie McLeod, Director of the Community Kindness Company, and also the galvaniser of the Caulfield Cobras, partnering the Gamma Jajefi?
Jajefi, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
an academy for soccer in Uganda for Ugandan school kids. Thank you so much. And if you go to the Caulfield Cobras website, you'll be able to see all about it.